Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan from Rocks and Stocks News. We have another of our executives of mining companies coming on to talk about their news. My audience will be aware of Endurance because we have done a fair amount of interviews with Rob Boyd. Robert, thank you very much for joining me today.
Well, pleasure to be back together with you, Allan, and we look forward to another year coming up. But we put out some good results today, which has captured the market's attention to some degree. And it's a good drill hole, but we've had a lot of good drill holes in our program this past year. And I think I provided an update yesterday where 75% of our drilling had significant intersections, and maybe 20% or so had excellent intersections. And this this release today was added to that in terms of the fact that we had one really good drill hole that was 3 grams over 139 meters or so, but still 2 other good intersections, including one that was around 16 grams over 3.7 meters, which opens the system up to the southeast. So this continues to build on our success and exploration success on this new epizonal orogenic discovery that we've got in an historic camp.
Well, those really catch my attention, Robert, because of the Swan Zone at Fosterville was really a company maker for already a fairly sizable company in Kirkland Lake. When they got into that Swan Zone, they were mining at very low cost and high grade, which means very, very attractive margins. It made them one of the lowest cost producers of gold in the planet, and one of the best performers that led to a takeover of the company. So these can be company makers. I think you're onto something special, and your valuation is only $56 million currently.
Yeah, and that analogy with Fosterville is good. There's always changes, but the key there's always differences, age differences and other things like that. But the fact is that we're in the same kind of geological setting. We're high level in terms of a brittle deformational regime. So, and then when the fluids precipitate out, you often have this antimony or stibnite association, which is exactly what was the case at Fosterville. And higher level, where they were mining for a number of years at the higher levels, and they were in a system that probably has a lot of analogies to what we're discovering near surface of an antimony system, an antimony bearing system that's got a lot of gold in it. And it wasn't until they started following their system at depth and then saw it transitioning into this real zone where they saw a lot more coarse gold, and that's what the Swan Zone was. So the benefit of these systems is they're orogenic gold systems, and Fosterville, like ours, is possibly zoned so that as you go deeper, we'll move into a system where you have coarser gold and maybe really good kind of grades like Fosterville. But we don't know. That's the phase of drilling we still got to do. But in the meantime, we're identifying what we see as a significant system near surface, which has got good grades, good widths, and opens up the possibility of a project that has mineability near surface and shallow underground. And then as you continue to grow these systems, it could generate and evolve into a system with more free gold like the Swan Zone you're referring to. And our age dates and sulfur isotope and oxygen isotope and all that scientific data says that the age of our system is very similar to Braylorn, which is only 10 kilometers away on a parallel structure. And that's one of these kind of gold systems that was narrower veins with higher grades, but they had a lot more free gold in their system than what we see in ours at the present time. We still see some visible gold in our system, but when you get into the mid-levels, these things transition into systems that have more free gold associated with them.
So a few things really stand out to me from what you've found near surface, Rob. One is I would point out that fine-grained nature. You're already getting very handsome grades in the fine-grained material. Secondly, that the what you're doing at near surface gives you a guide to where you should go deeper. I think the real exciting stuff is deeper, but to just poke deep holes in is a hit and miss prospect. You will have more predictability based on the way that you guys have gone about doing this.
Yeah, and you know, we've got a system that's a new discovery at surface. So you want to understand what's the strike length of this new zone that we've got, for instance, and we use that understanding of that strike length based of the program that we've got this year, which is now about 550 meters of trend just on the Eagle zone. We've got gold over about 1.5 kilometers in other zones, but this Eagle zone in particular, we now feel we understand where the center of mass of that system is, and we can use that to help design now our deep program to chase it at depth. That together with the better understanding of structural scenarios and structural settings and locations, all of these things you need to put this kind of shallow work together to understand it and use that to help with intelligent step outs as you follow this system at depth.
You're really at I think, an interesting juncture in the exploration of an orogenic gold system, in that, that surface zone often is an indicator of the depth of the system. The fact that you're getting these high grades in the fine material is very encouraging. And this is all going to help you to keep going deeper into that orogenic gold system.
Yeah, and if you look at our press release today, figure 4, we have a photograph of what the core looks like. It doesn't particularly look impressive when you see it in that drill picture, but there's some intercepts in there that are running 34 grams of pretty significant numbers in there, and it's all related to this sulfide replacement and brecciation. And so the mineralization is not only in the breccia fragments, but in the matrix. And so you get very good consistency of mineralization when you're in a zone. It has pretty good grades from sample to sample, and you can see it in that interval where we have, I think it was 12.85 grams over 12.9 meters that I show in that picture, which is just a sub-interval in this larger intersection that we announced today.
So to make it for the non-geologist out there, the investors, that when you talk about brecciation, that means the rocks are broken up. I would add that something broke them up. Secondly, that in between those broken pieces, in the matrix around it, you're also getting gold mineralization. And this is all indicative of a very powerful gold mineralizing system.
Yeah, it indicates that, there's at least, we're seeing at least 2 or 3 pulses of gold into this brecciation system. And whenever you see that, that's a better sign for better grades. And so because you've got it's a powerful system that continues over some time and generates mineralization. And the mineralization in this case, rather than a crack and seal vein, when you're in the high level brittle, you get a lot more gas that comes out of the system, i.e. CO2, and it creates brecciation, together with the brittle deformational regime. So you see propagated breccias that create the possibility of and indication of areas where there's potential wide zones of good grade mineralization.
So again, it just goes back to the point of how important this near surface work is. I mean, at Fosterville, they were mining for about 20 years in the near surface zones. And then they got deeper, and the rest is history, so to speak. But you kind of, that 20 years of mine life at Fosterville is kind of what you're doing with your drilling, learning, and will help you predictably go deeper.
Exactly, and you know, and but what's going to carry this is what we find that's closer to surface in terms of economics. So it's important to understand what you've got in the shallower levels, but still have the comfort that we know that explore and put the deep drilling in at some point, so you can demonstrate the possibility of this system evolving at depth. And we don't understand the system well enough to know where that's going to be in this straight Fosterville type analogy, but you know, we know it's going to occur at some point just because we see it occurring elsewhere in the camp. So.
And also the knowledge you learn is not just about the mineralization, but the complexity of the structures that the metals bearing fluids use as a path of least resistance to bring those fluids with the gold in them up from the depths.
Yeah, organic gold systems are often associated with very large regional scale structures. And those regional scale structures are really important in terms of tapping into the metamorphic fluids or whatever that pick up the gold and bring it up the system. But the key to depositional environment for gold deposits is understanding what is it in those bigger structural systems. What are the local controls for making that gold drop out in those certain areas? And it can be rheological contrast. It can be all kinds of different scenarios. So every gold system is a little different. And so we have to evolve our understanding to say, well, what is it that's really making the gold drop out in this area? Once we understand that, we can use it as a predictable model.
Because as put it into less geology terms, those deep cracks, those crustal cracks, are what is your sort of your main conduit, if you will. Then you'll have secondary cracks, and you also have stratigraphic horizons of the different rock packages. So understanding that secondary faulting and also the various different rock pack units inside of that is what you need in order to go deeper.
Yeah, and we've definitely demonstrated out of our exploration activity this year that we have a shallower dipping feature, which we call our Eagle Zone, and that rolls and translates into a steeper dipping feature, which we call our Eagle South Feeder Zone. But they're all part of the same system. They just look like they're in different sort of structural regimes, so the Eagle. The shallower dipping Eagle is just probably one of these subsidiary structures, but it's extremely well mineralized, and we see the signs that there's multiple zones now in the feeder that have potential of continuing with mineralization at depth. One of our better intersections that we announced earlier this year at 15.7 grams over 24.8 meters or so was in that kind of feeder type environment. So, and we've got other 30 meter type hits and several 6-7 meter type hits, all of them in there suggesting that this system is there and continuing as at depth in this different structural regime from the shallower features.
So just prior to putting this news out today, you did a summary of the past year and an outlook of what will happen in 2023. Can you highlight some of that for us as well, Robert?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we felt it was probably a good idea just to summarize to everybody what we've accomplished in terms of our outstanding year of exploration, and the statistics of our drilling have been pretty good. Where we, you know, I think of our holes drilled, greater than 75% had significant intersections, and that would be sort of anything over 3 grams over 3 meters would be what we consider significant. And of that significant batch, 20% of our total drilling had intersections where we get more than 10 grams over 10 meter type hits. So that's pretty impressive. And this hole we announced this morning adds another one of those very excellent type drill intersections to that statistical pool. And so we've had some great success, and in particular up at the Eagle Zone, the success has been very good in terms of our drilling there. So now we want to capture that and transition into a program of additional drilling in 2023, where we focus on not only filling in some of the gaps, near surface gaps between Eagle and Imperial and some other areas that are essentially undrilled but look like they've got potential to have mineralization in them, but also turn around and perhaps dedicate another rig to chasing this gold system at depth. And now as we do that, and identify new zones, we can start dedicating rigs to the different zones we identify. So we see a program of hopefully evolving into at least 2 diamond drill rigs this year. And if we identify new zones we want to chase at depth, we just start dedicating a different rig to each one of those zones as we chase this whole system at depth. And that's just on the Royal Shear, right? And we through our activities this year and growth of our land position, we've identified at least five other parallel structures in this system, many of which have gold and antimony associated with them, with strong alteration, just like the system we're exploring now. And so we want to upgrade those systems and say, have we got a camp here and that we can explore and identify other systems to complement it. But our focus this year is to really build out what we've got on this Royal Shear trend, and then transition into a scenario where perhaps in 2024 we're now starting to drill other parallel structures and test those and dedicate new rigs to those, because but you want to make sure you generate a target that justifies drilling, and we use the right technique of drilling to test them, because if we're chasing some of these zones near surface, they're often quite oxidized because of this cataclastite type breccias. And so we found we've had some real success with the RC drilling, because we get good recovery through those zones when they're in the oxidized area, and you can really understand what you've got and build on that with your diamond drilling when it gets below the oxidized portions.
Well, the fact that you've got potential parallel zones is all indicative of the power of the entire mineralizing system and the jewelry boxes that can be contained below deeper.
Well, yeah, in orogenic camps, no matter where you are in the world, it's very rare that there's just one deposit. And in fact, the Braylorn Pioneer trend was 3 different mines that are basically the same system, and they're all consolidated now under the current owner. But what happens is these camps have multiple structures in them because they're in a compressional regime. You're dealing with continental collisions, so you have a lot of fluids that get generated out of that kind of environment, and all these structures can often create when you're in an orogenic camp, there's multiple deposits in multiple structures. And so that's our focus now, is to say, well, why don't we focus our exploration on the shallower type systems and explore for those? And that's our goal, was to try and consolidate those with our acquisition of land this past year, and use that as the future growth for us once we get past a critical mass on our current Royal Shear trend. So
have you guys reported all of your assays so far, or do you have more?
No, we still have. We still have 2 more holes to report, and we hope to have those reported before the end of the month.
And then you'll be gearing up for your next drilling campaign.
Yeah. We're just now we're in a transition stage, and we'll be providing updates on that program. And so I think by the time we'll be providing updates on that. There's more news to come on other activities that we've had on the project, and transition into a program of hopefully back drilling early And we are fortunate that we could start a drilling program early compared to our competitors here in BC. So when you're out there drilling early, you can get good turnaround on results. And whereas some of our later holes here, we got caught up on the backlogs at the labs, and a lot of our results didn't come in till the new year here. So now
Okay, well,
catching up with our press release today. So
there you go. Okay, well, thanks for the update, Robert, and I'm looking forward to some future interviews.
okay, well, thank you, Allan.
I'm gonna wrap it up. We can have a chat at the other end.
Sure, great.
Okay, folks, so there you go. I'm a big fan of this project because one, I like to follow the evolution of a orogenic gold system. And what I often see is that they get to sort of a juncture, and that is a seminal moment in the exploration of an orogenic gold system. And I think that Endurance is at one of those inflection points. They've learned a great deal from the near surface stuff. It's all pointing towards the depth potential. And I'm really looking forward to them being able to strategically and predictably chase that system deeper. And so when you put it into the context of how important these orogenic gold systems can be, you then look at the company with a $56 million valuation who's on the one of those seminal moments. And I think that's a very exciting opportunity for investors out there that like exposure to gold stocks. The trend in gold is starting to go in our favor. The US dollar has recently gone through a death cross. At the same time, gold is going through a golden cross. And it's happening all at the beginning of the year, which is important because this is when a lot of investment funds are positioning themselves with the outlook for a year ahead. And what happens in January, called the January effect, can be very indicative of what's going to happen throughout the year. So I think we're coming into a much stronger market for gold stocks. And I think that Endurance specifically is at a seminal moment where they can now predictably chase the orogenic gold system to greater depths. And again, I think that's a great opportunity for investors. But as always, my shows are for research purposes only. It's important for you to speak with your financial advisors and also do your homework. Robert and I have done several interviews in the past. You can find on my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News. And you can start your homework process there, then go to their website, look at their corporate presentation, and then look deeply into their news releases, because you can see a lot in the evolution of the program as you watch the different news releases and the maps, cross sections, plan views that they provide. And Robert has a lot of experience in diamonds, and as I do, and this explaining things is really important in diamonds, and they're doing a great job of it on their orogenic gold system. On that note, have a great day, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you.